Choosing foods that you find easy to eat and digest, choosing foods that assist in digestion through their ingredient panel, being smart with how your food is prepared, movement. Yannick, I was driving home and I was thinking, I've obviously gone into Marks and Spencer's and I've bought loads of fish. Okay, and that spurred on what I wanted to talk about, because I was thinking about, it's inevitable in bodybuilding, you're going to hit a brick wall, isn't it, when it comes to eating?
Yeah.
You're going to be like, oh, I can't eat no more, fuck, shit, blah, blah, blah. No matter who you are, it would take a very, very rare breed to be able to always constantly stay satisfied from the foods you're eating enough that you can continue to eat the same foods all the time, especially when you're pushing up your body weight in bodybuilding. So I thought what I'd do today is I'll do a little video to explain maybe some strategies in order to allow you to continue to push up and earn some more muscle, because honestly, there's only so much chicken you can eat, there's only so much beef you're going to want to eat. You're going to have to come up with some ways, whatever they may be, in order to allow for you to continue to push those calories, prolong that state of being in like a surplus, because it ain't easy. It ain't easy. There's a few ways you can approach this. So let's start with the first thing that I have here, which is related to this video, and that is food choices. I've got a lot of white fish here, guys. I've got loads of cod, some bassa fillets, then I've actually got some pre-ground minced venison. And the reason I've got these food choices is because ground venison. Why? Ground meats, they're already pretty much broken down. Put them in a pan, pan fry that up. You're probably going to notice it's quite easy to go down the old hatchet, because it's going to require less chewing. Less chewing just means easier to get down, basically, because the chewing is the thing that's going to drive you crazy after a time. Chicken, I just feel like I'm there forever, chewing. And the flavour of, obviously, chicken is what you get bored of. So it's not just the flavour of the food you're eating, it's the texture of the food you're eating. You want to try and make your job easy by choosing to have foods that are either more delicate and easier to break down. That's two things I would definitely implement once you hit a brick wall with eating these solid chicken breasts. Obviously, if you do like chicken, and you can just shred the chicken yourself, put it into really tiny pieces, or you can mince the chicken yourself or buy minced chicken as well. Obviously, again, and then from a palatable standpoint, choosing foods that you do still really like. So salmon is one thing that I find still pretty easy to eat regardless on any given day. From a flavour standpoint, as long as you're hitting the same macronutrients, you're trying to get a certain amount of protein a day from a lean source, then you can just switch one lean source for another. So I would happily switch my chicken dishes for some bassa fillet, because they yield roughly the same amounts of fats and proteins. Second thing I would do as well now, so if you're really struggling with your food, this is a really easy one, a really easy one, is I'd actually start to wear a Fitbit and monitor your steps. Look at what an average day would entail. One of the average days being the days that you are already struggling, then you take that number of steps and you just add more to it, creating a little bit more activity. And I don't mean more gym time, I just mean more time on your feet moving around. Low impact stuff that would encourage maybe getting out of the house a little bit more. What you come to realize is there's a relationship between being active in a relaxed environment that also relates to your mental health as well. If you're moving more, you will feel better, you'll feel less lethargic. And if you can avoid feeling lethargic, then digestion will be better as well. When you do these really heavy off seasons and you're just pushing the food in and you're like, I don't want to move too much, I want to stay quite static because I just want calories to mean more. As great as that sounds and as great as that is maybe for a week or two, by week 3, you're backed up and you're unable to digest. So I would definitely encourage movement. And I think one of the easiest ways to do that is just get a step counter. Let's say on an average day you do 3,500 steps and you're struggling with your digestion or appetite, then add maybe 1,500 steps to that and just monitor and see how you feel. And if after a solid week of doing those additional steps, you find that your food is going down easier, that is certainly something that was worth doing. Another thing now that you could also adjust is certain food types encourage obviously better digestion. I use sauerkraut quite a lot, which is obviously very rich in prebiotics. Life cultures help with digestion. Enzymes from foods such as pineapple, which really does help break down protein. You can also use obviously digestive enzymes from supplement companies. We have here some digestive enzymes. So your digestive enzymes typically are your pepsin, What else we got in here? Bromelain. Don't know what that one is. Anyway, digestive enzymes. Again, life cultures. Life cultures, if you can't get them in like supplement form, then you can have them from foods. One food that's kind of rich in those is your live bio yogurts. So your Fage or Fire Zero, or your Fire 5%, 2%, doesn't matter what it is. You might want the fats from that yogurt. Yogurt's a great addition if you do handle dairy okay. Another thing you need to like really consider as well, guys, for your appetite is, are you actually training hard enough to warrant the amount of food you're eating? Obviously, if your training capacity is not really meeting, you're not creating enough demand to warrant the amount of calories that you're putting in your body, then you're going to notice it because you're not going to want to eat it. So I always try to tell people, like, you have to make sure that when you go in the gym, it's like an all or nothing thing. You go in there and you really, really do, you know, hammer the shit out of it. Make sure that you expend all the energy so that you create that demand. Because if you don't create demand, then you're not going to be able to do it. It's like shoveling soil on top of soil and just creating a mound that's never going to be able to get cleared. So, you know, heavy, hard training, intensifiers, self-awareness on how hard you train and how hard you contracting. Are your workouts efficient enough? Do you do enough exercises? Do you lift enough weight? If that's all in place, then that's going to really assist digestion. So you could be eating a specific diet, and if your training was like kind of piss poor and you just sorted out your training alone, you'd probably notice appetite go through the roof. Another thing there's always a difference between as well is, for many people, whether they're assisted or not, some people report that the minute you jump on cycle, the appetite kind of goes up. I don't think that's a response to the cycle itself. I think that's a response to the training that you get from being on cycle. So it kind of relates to what I'm just saying now. I think that a cycle encourages you to train harder, therefore, you know, create more demand, therefore warrant eating more food and actually increase appetite. So I don't think it's like a chemical response that you put gear in and then all of a sudden you're like hungry. If anything, it can be quite the opposite, especially if you're using like orals, you know, your Dynabol, I know your Anavars, anything like that. A lot of people report that when they're eating them, it really affects digestion and appetite. Again, another thing that you might want to consider if you are assisted is the removal or the timing of oral anabolics. If you are using them, maybe you want to put them like right at the end of the day before bed so that you don't affect your appetite for the day ahead. If that doesn't even help, then perhaps consider actually removing them entirely and don't have them at all. Because more often than not, probably 70% of cases that I hear from people's appetite suffering is when they've introduced an oral into their cycle. So what we've gone over so far. So choosing foods that you find easy to eat and digest. Obviously, that's really, really fundamental. Choosing foods that assist in digestion through their ingredient panel. Being smart with how your food is prepared. So whether it's already like kind of minced, broken down, chopped up, easier to just get down the hatch. Movement, making sure you're moving enough and not being static. Training intensity, warranting the food. And then there's a caveat to that, because now on the other side of things, on the rest days are when I find myself actually often very hungry. It's making sure that you rest adequately as well around your training so that you don't suppress your appetite through overtraining. Because another thing that can happen is that if you're balls to the wall all the time and you overshoot, central nervous system gets wrecked, appetite goes out the window, fatigue kicks in. Now, a lot of people won't ever reach that level of fatigue because they won't be training to that intensity. It's a small amount, but it is possible. So for those of you that are mad men or mad women and do really, really hammer it home when you get in the gym, it's fundamental that on your rest days that you really treat them as a chance to recover, like fully recover. If you do that, you'll find on your rest days your appetite's really good and that you are able to eat consistently through the entire day. That will help in the long run. And then my final bit of advice really for this would be cycling your food, you know, periodizing your food. If you're training a body part that is less demanding, then maybe that day you don't need to push the food so much. Keep protein all roughly the same, but perhaps with your carbohydrate or fat content, you can keep it a little bit lower, just so that that little bit of less demand isn't overshadowed by overconsumption. If it's a leg day or a back day and you find that it's really taxing, then perhaps those days you can bump those calories up to suit. It's funny saying that because I find actually on the big days is when I don't feel very hungry for a while after training, just because I think the amount it takes out of you. Realistically, you know, 5 exercises on back is going to burn more calories than 5 exercises on biceps, let's be real. And then the last extension of that kind of answer as well would be like your nutrient choices, like knowing how to distribute what types of food and where. Obviously, around the training window, what you don't want to do is be putting in anything that's going to block you up too much and make you feel lethargic, like you don't want to train. But you also want to make sure that you're controlling blood sugar, because that has a massive effect on appetite and energy as well. So, you know, prior to training, you obviously want a good amount of carbohydrates digested, maybe a little bit of fat if the carbohydrates aren't super complex, just to keep those energy levels nice and steady, and a decent amount of protein. Then, you know, in the morning and last thing before bed, carbohydrates probably aren't the most essential nutrient that you need because they're not being used for any, you know, energy as such. You'll probably wake up feeling pretty hungry, which is a good place to be if you're only having protein and a little bit of fat before bed. I think it's always a really good feeling and a good indication that if you wake up in the morning feeling somewhat able to eat in an off season, then that's a really good place to be. The last thing you want to do is wake up in the morning on off season and be like, man, I don't want to eat for 5-6 hours. I'm not saying you have to eat immediately. I don't think that's good either. But if you're waking up at, you know, 8 a.m. and it's 1 in the afternoon and you're feeling like you still can't eat, then making up the calories for the rest of the day is going to be virtually impossible. And that's what we don't want. So it's a fine balance between energy output, recovery, quality of, you know, sleep, food choices, and just all these decisions that you're making on a daily basis in order to cater towards the goal, which is trying to put on muscle. So there are many other things we could look into, but I think from simple terms, the one thing and the best bit of advice from all this today, I would say, is just be aware that there is a big difference between how easy it is to eat fish versus chicken. You know, I'm sick of chicken right now, so fish is on the cards. I had a fish meal like 2 days ago in replace of a chicken meal, and it went down in a quarter of the time. So just keep it interesting, keep the food interesting, keep it palatable, but make sure you are still eating enough. And that's that. I'm going to cook some food. So I hope that helps. Any questions, obviously, guys, follow the channel, IFBB AMA. We are here to help you guys with everything and anything, whether it's nutrition related, mindset related, training related. Myself and the rest of the guys are more than happy to help. We appreciate you. If you want to talk about more of this in the future, let me know and we'll get chatting.